hmm
It's right here. Hey, welcome back to the Better Divorce Podcast, your friendly, helpful resource for all things divorce, from contemplating, surviving, and yes, healing and thriving after. And if you don't know who the heck I am, well, let me briefly tell you. Why would you listen to me? My name is Paulette Rigo. I am the CEO and founder of Better Divorce Academy, author of #1 best-selling book about divorce called Better Divorce Blueprint, the book, audiobook, workbook journal, and online course, and yes, the host of the Better Divorce podcast. As an ADR family law mediator and a certified high conflict divorce coach, I help my clients avoid court, save on all unnecessary legal fees, typically $40,000 to $70,000, but who's counting? And typically divorce in less than 90 days or swiftly, depending on where you live. So that's why you should get your notebook and sit down and listen up. Now, today I'm going to do a deep dive into co-parenting with one of the country's best experts. His name is Sol Kennedy. He's the founder of Best Interest. Isn't that a great name? Best Interest, because that's what the court says. It has to be in the best interest. The first co-parenting app designed to foster peaceful communication between co-parents using the power of AI. Now, isn't this genius? I think so. So, Sol, welcome to the show.
Paulette, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I love that we interviewed a little while back. I was a guest, and we kind of got to know each other and chatted. And I thought, man, this guy's really smart. I get a lot of questions from clients who are contemplating divorce in the early stages about just what do I do? How am I going to co-parent with this person that's, well, not so easy to get along with in marriage, let alone divorce. And then when they're in the midst of it and they're going through, whether they're mediating or litigating or maybe even collaborating or arbitrating, you still have to comply and communicate and make schedules and come to agreements about legal custody and physical custody and child support and who's going to pick up Susie at ballet and Jimmy at baseball. It's really, no, that was very stereotypical, everyone, but just getting along, right? And then after the divorce is final, just because you've got that piece of paper in your hand doesn't mean, well, you're done. So let's start with your story, Soul. Tell me a little bit about why you do what you do.
Yeah, Paulette, just hearing you list out all of those things, I'm feeling the headache, right? It's the impossible situation sometimes to be a co-parent, to to say no to a relationship in a certain way and then realize, oh wait, I need to help. I need to work on this relationship for the sake of my kids. And we need to make really important decisions together for the sake of our kids. It can be impossible. So my heart goes out to all the co-parents out there, especially those early on that are waking up to this new reality.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, you do wake up to that new reality. You have to shift your thinking from being a parent to being a co-parent. Dare I say a parallel parent or a counter parent. We could go into that a little more too, but and just also shifting your mind from being a family to now being, a separate, living as in different addresses. The dynamics of the family will change, but you never stop being a parent.
So many changes, and there's so much on your plate, especially in the early days of, figuring out there might be shifts in school and living situations and so many changes. So, yeah, again, I mean, I've been there. I was or I am a co-parent. I am a co-parent of two
Shame on
wonderful
you.
kids. I know. I'm not
I'm
through it
kidding.
yet. Um, but yeah, I mean, co-parenting can be really challenging, and as a co-parent, one of the things that I found most challenging early on was about communication. Here you're navigating an incredibly complex dynamic and situation, and there's hurt feelings on both sides. There's, events and things in the past that are kind of holding you back and making it difficult for you to really hear one another and trust one another. So when I found myself in that situation, being a techie, I've been in tech since I was a a little one actually, I knew that I wanted to help other co-parents with communication. And so I focused on that in the development of the Best Interest app, and I think created a solution that can really help co-parents hear one another and survive, especially even if they're in a high conflict situation with, you mentioned a term, counterparent, right? If you find yourself in that situation, these sorts of tools, AI tools, can really help us feel safe and survive and thrive, even in those situations.
Mm. So let's start with the app, because sometimes it's good to reverse engineer things and kind of work with the back end and move forward. I always like to say that too when I'm working with clients in mediation or in coaching, because you do ultimately have to set yourself up as if we can't come to an agreement. What would the judge say?
Yeah.
Because sometimes
Hmm.
that's like, I better think about that. So this tool that you've created, did you wake up one morning, and go, I've got an idea? Or did you was it something you organically worked into? Like, walk me through that journey of how you had this idea.
Yeah. So I have used our family wizard for many years. That's what we started with. That's what was recommended by our attorney. And so we were using that. And I'll bring you to this moment. I was lying in bed next to my new partner, and we were going to sleep. And I heard that ding, that familiar Our Family Wizard ding, and I was like, "Oh no," because it had been happening all day, and I said, okay, this is not working. I just like there. This is It's so difficult to recreate a life and to move on when there is this kind of constant engagement, this constant battle. And I found that Our Family Wizard wasn't doing anything to prevent it. Right? They talk about how you can print out the messages and take it to court. But my experience, was that the courts don't really have a lot of control or say. They basically just say, we'll use a co-parenting app. And so I felt stuck. And that was the beginning of the start of the app idea. And I'll tell you that, this was several years ago. This was before AI had been really available and had gotten so good. And so I actually at that time thought, maybe if I get a person to review the messages for me, then I'll feel better because they're not going to have the same triggers that I will. And so I actually hired an old coworker of mine to read the messages for me and give me a summary and tell me if there was anything urgent. And that helped for sure, but it obviously wasn't scalable, right? It's not, we can't
Unless
all
you
have
have
that
some
little
friends.
angel reading all of our messages for us and telling us what to say, right? Um, and so when AI came out, actually, the to take you to another memory, I was reading messages, or I was using AI to create stories for my kids. And that was my first interaction with AI, was using ChatGPT, and we would work together, and I would ask them what they wanted in their story, what animal. And it was really fun. And, it came up with a really cool story, and I would read that. And then it felt like a nice, interactive, fun thing. And one night after doing that, I'm like, well, gosh, it really seems to understand the meaning of the messages. Like, what if I just took my messages from my co-parent and put them in? Like, maybe that would help me. And I did, and it was incredible. And that was really the spark. I thought, well, if there's an app there that could be a layer, be a moderator between my co-parent and I, maybe we could really get to a better place where we're not constantly bickering or getting into the defensive posture with one another, and just really remove that conflict from the system.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, it's just genius. I mean, I am that little angel that people say, "Hey, could you look at my, read my message and
You are, yeah.
filter it?" And to be perfectly honest, that I mean, I've been doing it before AI existed, or I'm sure it existed, but people knew about it. But way back when, oh my, I'm going back to when my divorce first started. I used to send messages to my ex-husband that were like yardstick long, like, inches, because I used to think it was like therapy. And it would just be the wrong thing to do. I mean, this is,
Totally.
gosh, almost, 18, 19 years ago now. So, I've learned a lot in the last few years. So, but you're right. The emotion is what makes it, you keep going and going and going and going. Diarrhea of the mouth. It's incredible. You
Totally.
just emotionally vomit. You think that text thread or that email or that voice memo or that, phone message is somehow going to change reality or get them to understand. And let's just face it, it doesn't. So you
Totally.
do need a wise, discerning voice of reason to be able to look at the facts, right? To
Mhm.
take out the emotion and just respond in a manner that does not pour gasoline on the fire. We can get into some of those techniques soon, but beautiful. I do also recommend that everybody who has a high conflict, what I call antagonistic spouse, be careful that you're using the right person to share, or an AI is a perfect tool for that, or at least to run it through it, right? As you have
Mhm.
the app now,
Yep.
because you have to be careful who you share too much information with. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I asked my sister or my neighbor or my friend or whomever. And they're like, maybe that's not the greatest person to go to either. You have to really mitigate those outside influences, because sometimes they have an agenda too. They come along with their own, dare I say, baggage of what they think your response should be. You're being too gentle, you're being too kind, you're being, too I don't know, apologetic, or oh my god, you're such a fill in the blank, how could you have said that? You can win.
Totally.
It's very
Yeah.
difficult to have other people's point of views when you can't even decide what your point of view is.
Yeah.
And lastly, I was lucky enough many years ago to meet the owners of Our Family Wizard in person back in its infancy at a convention. And I thought it was brilliant. And I do recognize that the courts are starting to wake up to some of these tools, I like to call them, right? Like what's in your toolbox, like, do I need the hammer? Do I need the screwdriver? Maybe the measuring tape. You've got to have the right tool for the right problem, or you're not going to, fix the issue. And it was a great way for people to start to see that there's other things to do for accountability, record keeping, finances, calendar, contacts. And yes, you hit the nail on the head, pardon the tool pun, on soul, on the tool, right? On
Yeah.
the, you've got to have that right tool. So you have this app and you named it Best Interest. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you picked up on it, any co-parent that has unfortunately been to the court system to go through a trial or whatnot, you hear the term best interest of the kids
Yeah.
over and over again. And so really when I was envisioning best interest, it's really about protecting the kids because they're the ones that are harmed by the conflict. A lot of people have this, I think, a mistaken belief that divorce harms kids. And actually I believe it's more that the conflict is what causes the harm. And so if we can step in and help reduce the conflict in the family system, then everyone benefits,
Mm,
right?
yes, I write that in Better Divorce Blueprint, that it isn't
Mhm.
divorce. I mean, there's research to back this up. This isn't Paulette talking, everyone.
Yeah,
There's years of research of clinical psychologists and people that know what the heck they're doing. It isn't divorce that messes up or traumatizes or harms children. It's how the parents, dealt with the divorce, how they managed the divorce. Did they do it politely and kindly with respect and transparency and integrity, or were they psychopaths through it? That's my
totally.
own term, not them, but it's very true. You can start to see, and we, of course, we all have our good and bad days. No one's perfect, but for the most part, that is what the children remember. How did mom and dad handle the divorce? Not that they got divorced. but how did they handle it? What is the impact? And if you can have a tool in your back pocket 24/7 at your disposal that isn't, your sister, your neighbor, or somebody, but it's something that is discerning and wise. Hell, I would have done it. I wish it had existed many years ago when I got divorced. So I'm so thrilled to be able to bring this solution to my audience and my clients. And so a lot of people listen to Better Divorce podcast. It was an accident. I told you my story, but I'm very committed to giving expert tools and resources to people, whether that be financial, residential, lending, insurance, taxes, and yes, co-parenting, because it affects every aspect of your life and nothing more than the children. So
Mhm.
kudos to you, my dear.
Thank
So tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the app. Like, what does it
Yeah.
do? What doesn't it do? How easy is it to download? What's the cost involved? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, sure. So Best Interest is available now on the Play Store for Android or the App Store for Apple. So you can download it and try it out for free. And if you choose to sign up for it, it's $15 a month, or we're running a special for $100 per the year.
That
And
is affordable. I'll mail you a check.
yeah. And so, yeah, best interest, what it can do, it has a few ways of operating. So if you and your co-parent sort of see eye to eye, but maybe are really early on and you're dealing with a lot of stuff with the court system and there's some conflict and decisions that need to be made, best interest can step in for both of you. You can download the app, you can link up your accounts, and then you can communicate with the app together. And it can help coach you into a better way of communicating with one another. The other way that the app can operate, I think, is very unique, which is that especially if you're in a situation where you have a counterparent or your co-parent is very antagonistic or even, emotionally, verbally abusive, you can download the app today by yourself and you can use it on your own to filter the messages. And your co-parent doesn't have to download an app. They don't have to agree to anything. They'll just use SMS and then we'll process the messages for you. And so to give you an example of what that looks like,
Brilliant.
thank you, Paulette. So Paulette, let's just imagine I'm your co-parent, right? And I'm feeling frustrated. And let's say I'm the counterparent and I'm going to say, well, Paulette, you're always running late. I'm just going to remind you to show up at 9 a.m. or else, there's a threat. There is some bringing up of history. You're probably going to get a little defensive, right? How could you not, right? And then there's the wall of text, and then there's the back and forth, and there's the engagement, which is not good for anyone. So if you're using the Best Interest app, you'll receive from me, it'll say Soul wants you to pick them up at 9 a.m. And that's it. And there'll be a little icon saying there's more to the message. So you just have received what you need to know to be a good co-parent, right? To do your duty in that exchange, but you didn't receive anything else. And later, when your kids are dropped off, when you're feeling more resourced, maybe when you're with your therapist, you can actually see that original message and process your triggers and heal, because we're all about healing here, right? We do want to heal from our triggers. We want to learn to be better in all situations and all relationships. But it really helps you stay present with your kids and get out of that relationship trauma that a lot of us find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
Yeah,
hamster wheel where you just can't seem to get
totally.
it. Yeah.
And then, as you also send a message back, if you send a message back, let's say you do still kind of get into that triggered mode and you shoot off something, long. Well, Best Interest will review the message before it gets sent out, and it will give you tips on how to make your communication more clear and less likely to have you feel regret later. As you know, a lot of communication ends up in the courtroom,
Right.
right?
Or
And
that saying of, I can't, did I just send that?
totally, like you're feeling triggered and you send it. Like we all have that experience. Like, oh, ooh, I shouldn't have said it that way.
Ouch. Right. Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
so Best Interest can help coach you into a better way because we understand the meaning of every message. And speaking of meaning of messages, one of the cool features that I really love is a lot of co-parents can get into this pattern of messaging just constantly, right? We have clients that get 150 messages a week, right? Crazy amounts of communication. And that's not good for anyone. Here you're trying to rebuild a life, you're trying to stay present with your kids, and you're just getting all this stuff. So with best interest, you can set a real boundary. You can say, I only want to hear from my co-parent once per day. And we can honor that for you because if there is ever an emergency situation or an urgent situation, like I'm running 15 minutes late, we'll pass that message through because you need to know that right away. Everything else, that can wait until 9 a.m. tomorrow, right?
Right.
And it just gets you out of that habit of just constant, quick engagement and slows everything down.
It stops the adrenaline and the cortisol cycle of, drop.
Totally.
Yeah.
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 And you mentioned that I really agree with you so much. I'm nodding. If you're listening to the audio, I've been nodding like a bobblehead doll. But one of the best ways to manage successfully that antagonistic, high conflict situation uh, in your divorce, whether that be the whole darn thing from beginning to end or just one little issue, is to reduce the communication, like to really
Yes.
to reduce the amount of communication, so that there isn't that constant bombardment of, well, you threw up the number 150 messages. If I always say, if you can say something in 5 words, that say it in 5 words, you don't have to use 20. Be
Yeah.
efficient in your messaging.
Yeah.
Can leave a bad impression or a negative impression or a dramatic impression if you're putting in too much colorful language or urgency, or digging up the past.
And,
It's not always good.
and it's hard, Paulette, because, this is it's a stressful situation to be a co-parent. You're navigating some really important issues that sometimes feel really urgent. But I know for myself, what I have gotten into a habit um, of what I do is I have agreed with myself, set a boundary with myself to not respond immediately to anything, right? Obviously, if it was an emergency, I'd respond immediately. But if I get a message, no matter what it is, I set my phone down, I go walk around the block, and I consider it. And then I respond after I've had a chance to really process it. And that's what I advise to my clients is to just try to slow everything down, right? We still want to be in communication with our co-parent, of course. Like there's important communication, but it does not have to be as so rapid. Because when we're firing things off, even if it's a simple little, okay or yes, sometimes that keeps the heat in the conflict. So yeah,
It's
slow it
a
down.
it's a blessing. I really see that. I mean, granted, I do believe that there's a little bit of controversy out there with AI, if it's used improperly. And honestly, so what does that even mean right now? We don't know yet. But right now, I do see communication as being one of the advantages of it. It
Oh
does
my
help
gosh.
you
Yeah.
improve your language, find the right word so that you're conveying that necessary, needed information to your spouse, ex-spouse, co-parent, wherever you are in the process. Sometimes it's earlier. Um, and people aren't always so good at finding the right words when they're emotionally invested at the moment. We just say it just to, well, I told him or I showed her. It doesn't always help. So I'm
Well, and
really excited
I,
about this.
yeah, you're speaking my language. AI to me, I definitely understand the fears. I have fears myself. It's changing everything, and I think that it's going to change the world in ways that we can't even really comprehend. This is like before the internet was invented, and then suddenly there's internet. It's happening so quickly, and we're all just trying to catch up and understand. Are we going to have a job and all that? So, understandably around the fear, but I think personally that one of the core benefits of AI is helping us as a human race find peace. And I really think that we need a lot of that right now. We need to we need help understanding one another, hearing one another, slowing down, and listening and translating. Sometimes even if you speak the same language, you're speaking a different language, right? But AI can help us because it's not invested in the outcome. It doesn't have emotion. It can review a message and say, oh, well, that thing that you think it says, there's nothing there. They're just communicating something to you that is important for you to know.
Mm.
It can kind of get us out of our own heads, our own assumptions about what that co-parent is saying, and just dial down the intensity of human relationship.
It has a wonderful skill to also be able to organize thoughts that we as humans in the emotional moment don't, meaning you can put in the prompt your emotional copy, we'll call it copy for the moment, and say, please bullet point the following information in a chronological order. And, a simple prompt like that your brain couldn't comprehend to do in the moment. Whereas if you even just sent that, just the chronological list of what, whatever obviously we're all talking in hypotheticals here. And that's a gift to be able to, it teaches you to be a more critical thinker once you review it and go, oh, I could have done that too. But you know what? I've got a tool that can do it for me. I'm also assuming it does scheduling and all the other things like finances, or is it just a communication tool?
So, yeah, you ask a great question. So, when envisioning this new app, the team, we really decided to focus entirely on communication at the forefront because that's the area that the other co parenting apps just really don't get right.
Hmm.
And yes, we do have plans to roll out those features, expense tracking, calendars. But if you download the app today, we're really just focused on communication, journaling, things regarding, safekeeping of information and communication.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah,
So you may also need to keep track of a calendar or contact list or finances, in another location if you and are
totally.
also in need of that. Some
In,
people need help with that, some people don't, but it's good to know that right now it's mostly a communication tool with room to.
yeah. Yeah, and we have plans on adding that. Also, a lot of our clients end up using Google Calendar. There are a lot of tools out now that allow for easy exchange of that type of information.
Because you can have
Um,
one calendar and two people adding to it. Yeah,
exactly.
easy to
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
And finances, you could always add that in a Google Calendar as well, too, in the sidebar, like sneakers, $79 or something. You can make little
Totally.
notes there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can send you a link. We have some free Google Sheets and Google Calendar suggestions on our website of how to employ those for
Perfect.
anyone.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Well, I love this conversation. I do commit myself to giving my listeners and my clients the best experts, and you now are on my list. So, what is the best way for people to learn more about you and the work that you do, and how to sign up for Best Interest?
so just check us out at bestinterest.app or bestinterestapp.com, and you can find out information about the team, including myself, as well as download the app, check it out. There is a free trial, so easy to try out.
And you also have a other type of work that you do, or this is your
That's
sole?
right. I also have a podcast called Co-parenting Beyond Conflict, and we really focus entirely on the co-parenting experience, especially those that are experiencing high conflict co-parenting situations, how to navigate and thrive in that situation.
Perfect. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you, and I know it has for me. Man, do I wish I could wave a magic wand and go back, way back when my kids were little, and have you in my life back then. But c'est la vie, live and learn. I wouldn't have been able to do the work I do now hadn't I been through that experience of having gone through an 8.5 year high conflict litigated case. So here I am, and here you are, and we have to make lemonade out of lemons. So
Totally.
thank you so much, Soul, for your time. And everyone, again, I know you can't make it the best divorce, but you can make it the better one. So until next time, I'll see you around the block.
Thank you, Paulette.